Welcome to Genesis chapter 5 as we read the Bible together. And in chapter 5, after all the excitement of those first 4 chapters, we're brought up short by a genealogy. But this is no ordinary genealogy. You skip over it at your peril because there's some pretty big questions raised. First, we're introduced to this as the written account of Adam's line. The Hebrew wording is, "This is the book of the generations of Adam." Now, this official account, this book, is employed by Luke, who follows it exactly in the writing of chapter 3 of his gospel. Now, many times biblical genealogies differ from one another, choosing to highlight various noteworthy rather than all of the individuals in a particular line. Many Bibles will add a footnote explaining that the word father in this and other genealogies, so-and-so is the father of so-and-so, so-and-so is the father of so-and-so, can also mean ancestor. So-and-so is the ancestor of so-and-so, the ancestor. So we might say, for instance, that we are a descendant of the Duke of Marlborough, or that King George III is our ancestor, while we would not necessarily list our entire parental line. Now, the next few lines are very important. They read, "When God created humankind, Adam, he made them in the likeness of God. He created them male and female and blessed them. And he named them humankind, or Adam, when they were created." When Adam had lived for 130 years, when the human had lived for 130 years, he had a son in his own likeness, in his own image, and he named him Seth. Now, note the similarity in the phrasing. God created humankind in his own likeness. Likewise, Adam, the human, had a son in his own likeness. The image of God, intelligence, reason, the freedom to choose, continues to be passed on through the generations, despite things having gone wrong in the garden. Note also that in this genealogy, we're back to the language of chapter 1, which told us, so God created humanity, humankind in his own image. In the image of God, he created them. Male and female, he created them. Same identical language, same wording as in chapter 5. In fact, you could jump right from the end of chapter 1 to the beginning of chapter 5 and not know you missed anything. But as we know, in doing so, you would have missed a great deal. Now, the big thing we notice in even the most casual reading is that Adam and the descendants listed here have a remarkably long lifespan, generally in the 900-year range. And so immediately you begin to think, 900 years, really? The question is, are these years in the way that we would count them? Even dividing by 10, these people lived a good long time. Some have suggested that the language could mean months rather than years, which would therefore divide the ages by about 12, resulting in a life expectancy closer to our own. But you know what? The text doesn't really say that. It doesn't say months. It says years. Is there a theological point being made here that the poison of the tree of knowledge of good and evil takes numerous generations to really take effect? Chapter 6 doesn't seem to allow that explanation either, basically saying that after a period of time, God made an arbitrary decision to cap life at 120 years. There are those seeking a scientific explanation who say that our DNA had not become corrupted to the degree that it is now. And so the aging process, which is an accumulation of errors within the DNA as our cells replicate, was much slower. You know what, though? I think I'm content just to categorize this as a mystery and leave it at that. I'm only in my 60th year and I'm already falling apart. I can't imagine 600. Wrapping the whole unusually long lifespan discussion up, the patriarch Jacob, near the end of the book of Genesis, is 130 years old when he's introduced to the Pharaoh. And the Pharaoh is just astonished at the old man's incredible age. And Jacob replies, "The years of my earthly sojourn are 130. My years have been few and difficult, and they do not equal the years of the earthly sojourn of my ancestors." So Jacob was aware of these lengthy lives as well. And even at 130, which by then is regarded as mind-bogglingly, astonishingly old, Jacob still nevertheless finds grounds for complaint. A couple other interesting details. In chapter 4, we get a list of the descendants of Cain, while this list is the Seth line. Nevertheless, when you compare those two lists, many of the names overlap. Some of them have different spellings, others are spelled the same. Another thing to notice is that the famous Enoch, who is described as walking with God, an image of faithfulness taken from the walking with God in the garden in the cool of the day in chapter 3. Well, there's something special about Enoch, not only his faithfulness, but while the others eventually die, even after 900 years, Enoch instead is taken away by God. The New Testament book, Hebrews, in chapter 11, says this of Enoch. By faith, Enoch was taken from this life so that he did not experience death. He could not be found because God had taken him away. For before he was taken, he was commended as one who pleased God. Another interesting thing about Enoch. Enoch was the seventh descendant and lived 365 years. Those interested in biblical numerology or Kabbalah feel there's a great significance in these numbers which reflect both the number of days in the week and the number of days in the year. For me, again, it's a mystery. As the genealogy winds up, we're introduced to Noah, a name which means comfort or relief. As somehow his father Lamech foresaw that through Noah would come a form of deliverance. But Lamech could not have foreseen just what form that deliverance would take. We're going to have to wait until chapter 6 to find out. All in all, chapter 5, a mysterious chapter, forming part of a mysterious section which continues on to chapter 6, verse 9, after which we're going to enter into more familiar territory. But I think you'll be surprised at what we actually find there nonetheless. And for that, we'll see you next time.